Dr. G, I want to ask you about Mosul, which the Iraqi prime minister is claiming victory. We have Frank Gaffney on. Frank Gaffney saying victory is not quite necessarily in hand quite yet. Is that a PR move, or has Mosul been reclaimed from ISIS? Your thoughts?
Yes, it has been liberated with any city. I mean, remember, this is the second largest city in Iraq. There will be mopping up operations. The reports you see that, well, not all of Mosul is peaceful is akin to saying, well, not all of Berlin was peaceful when we liberated Berlin, therefore we haven't won. It's the nature of war. There are mopping up operations, but the significance of this event cannot be overemphasized, because remember, not only is this the second biggest city in Iraq, but this is the city where, thanks in part to the withdrawal of our forces under the Obama administration in 2011, this is the city where Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi in 2014 declared from the Grand Mosque in Mosul the reestablishment of the caliphate under ISIS. That caliphate is no more. It's gone. It ceased to be. And therefore, it really is important to recognize the significance of what the Iraqi forces, with our help, have achieved just this week.
Your deputy assistant to the president, Dr. Sebastian Gorka, joining us yet again. Always pleased to have him on the show. A few other topics I want to get to with you. And first of all, you mentioned Baghdadi, and I'm curious, how come there's always so many reports? I feel like every other day I read a report that he's been killed, and then I hear the report is not true. What am I supposed to believe here? It's very hard to keep up.
Well, do you remember, let's go back a few years, do you remember how often we had reports of bin Laden being killed?
Yes, of course.
I remember for years, there was this ongoing rumor that he was on dialysis in a cave somewhere, when in the end we actually found him in that building in Abbottabad. So it's just the fog of war. We've heard these reports repeatedly. We take all of them with a dose of salt. One of the first truisms of war is all initial reports are wrong. So we're going to bide our time. We have intelligence capabilities like no other nation on the planet. But this is always going to happen in warfare. The most important high-value target is Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, and there will always be these kinds of reports. But let's just wait and see.
Okay, that's about what I figured, but you always articulate it so cleanly. So I appreciate that, Dr. G. So let's move on to the travel ban. Despite the Supreme Court's ruling, the left is and the activist courts are organizing, and you're going to see massive amounts of pushback. And there are certain states, I think there's a dozen or so, maybe 14 that are still challenging the ban. What's the latest here?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting to note that right after the Supreme Court's decision that recognized our authority and the president's authority to reinstate this travel ban with a minor modification, what did we see as a reaction? We put this in place. It has been reenacted. We are we are putting a moratorium in place from those 6 nations in the interests of U.S. national security. And what happened? We were promised massive demonstrations like there were last time, if you recall the chaos at JFK and elsewhere, and they simply didn't materialize. So there are talks of massive pushback, of the so-called resistance, but it really isn't happening. And I see this as akin to the loss of steam that is being demonstrated by those who don't want to recognize what happened on November the 8th. So we're very, very happy. The Supreme Court has made its decision. We'll return to it in full detail later this year, but we have implemented it, and we're going to control access to this country from those 6 nations of greatest concern, which, of course, let's remember, were identified by the Obama White House as the nations of greatest concern when it comes to terrorism.
Now, Dr. G, you had a moment on CNN the other day that is really it's become a viral moment where you actually called out CNN on CNN, and it was, you said that more people are interested in cartoons than CNN, and I'll tell you that this is a factually accurate statement. The various cartoon shows and Cartoon Networks get much higher ratings than CNN does, but the fact that you would do this throwdown on CNN, I thought was quite hilarious and quite in your face. Talk to us a little bit about that moment in that interview.
Yeah, so again, this is a very positive sign for those people who want to see a return to the America that we are proud of. So the mainstream media, what a colleague of mine in the White House, Andrew Sarabian, coined yesterday, he said the fake news industrial complex, which I love, is basically tanking. If you look at the latest polling figures, we have CNN in 13th place at peak in the nation, when Nick at Night, the children's channel, is on 11. So it's 2 places above CNN. You look at great shows, wonderful shows like my friend Tucker Carlson, that are almost reaching 4 million viewers at the same time that Mr. Cooper on CNN can barely scrabble up 700,000. So I think this is indicative of this, the failure, that the price you pay when you have a politically agenda-driven news cycle. So we've had, 9 months of all kinds of spurious accusations against the administration. They've all turned out to be fallacious, absurd, nightmarish attempts to undermine our legitimacy. And the American people are saying, enough is enough. And places like CNN, New York Times are paying the price, and unfortunately have lost the prestige they ever had.
Now, turning back to the Trump-Russia conspiracy theories, which have certainly there's been a lot of kindling thrown on the fire this week with the revelation about Donald Trump Jr., and there were some others who were close to the president who were at least briefly a part of that meeting with a lawyer who was affiliated with the Kremlin, and then she wasn't, and then now she is again, according to different reports. It is hard to keep up and to figure out what actually is the real news here and separating the real news from the fake news. But I think that says more about our era in media than it does about the story itself. But you said a couple of days ago that it was standard, or yesterday morning, it was either yesterday morning or 2 nights ago, that this was a standard political practice, this meeting. Donald Trump Jr. was on Hannity's show yesterday. I think he gave a pretty reasonable explanation for the meeting, but he did say that he would have handled things differently if he had the opportunity to do it again. Is that inconsistent at all with you saying it's standard?
No, I don't think so. I was making more general comments about things that occurred during a political campaign. So, the president's made his official statement. He called his son an individual of high quality yesterday, and he praised him for his transparency. I mean, think about what we've done. We don't have to have our emails stolen from us like John Podesta. We actually, Donald Trump Jr. actually voluntarily gave them out on Twitter. So that shows you just the level, the difference between the 2 different ways of doing politics. And on top of that, I'll let the president's word speak for himself. But this is clearly a meeting that was organized in bad faith by the interlocutors that requested it. As soon as it turned out to be to have been requested on bad faith, it was shut down and there was no further action taken. Let's compare that to the DNC, to the Hillary campaign, that actually sends one of its operatives to the Ukrainian embassy to collect Oppo research, to actually collect it, and then coordinate with members of that foreign government attacks on our campaign. So again, the news media would have you look at something that doesn't exist, while the actual real news story is never given any time on channels such as CNN. So again, they try to divert us from the truth, but places like Breitbart and the American voter simply won't have it.
Yeah, and this is something that I lament greatly, and we had to start the show spending most of the first hour on the updating our listeners on the latest in the Russia conspiracy, and it's because we have to arm them, because this is what they're going to be talking about around their water coolers today. We want to give them all the information we can, which is a shame, because the administration's accomplishing a number of things, and some of them are quite revolutionary. The lead story at Breitbart this morning is a first-hand report that we had from our reporter Christina Wong that President Trump is closer to a 12-carrier Navy goal with the USS Gerald R. Ford, and this is something we have a great report on it. And this is really all about peace through strength. It's about bringing the nation's carrier fleet up to a level that we think is going to be better. This creates jobs. This creates infrastructure jobs. This creates more military might as the world gets increasingly more complex and more scary. A strong United States is something that I think most of the country, certainly the Trump voter base, will welcome. Not as much time that we can dedicate to these discussions, Dr. G.
Yes, but we can on Breitbart because this isn't fake news. And I saw Christina's piece, and I commend her for the great work she's doing at covering the defense angle. This is the reality of the Trump administration. Just look at what we've achieved. Let's go back to Mosul. So we've been in office less than 26 weeks, not months, 26 weeks. And we've already achieved the liberation of Mosul. We have managed, thanks to the offices of Secretary Kelly, to decrease illegal migration across the southern border without yet building the wall by 73%. I mean, these are the real stories, whether it's the stock market rallying every single day to record highs, whether it's the employment figures, whether it's this latest initiative with the 12th carrier. This is what we are doing. This is the MAGA train that is unstoppable because it reflects the nature of the president. So, this is a steam train. People are worried who voted for us that we're decelerating. We're not even maintaining speed. We are accelerating. And this latest story is just part and parcel of the president's very clear understanding that diplomacy without the option of force, backing it up, is meaningless. It's just words. It's those empty pieces of paper that were shown to us for the last 8 years that meant nothing and actually created vacuums and instability across the planet. But we trust our military. We believe in those that wear the cloth of the Republic, and having the most capable Navy in the world is good for American interests and also good for the interests of anybody who is part of our civilization. Just look at the Warsaw speech. We stand by our values, we're proud of our values, and we will stand shoulder to shoulder with anybody who shares them.
Dr. Sebastian Gorka, Deputy Assistant to the President. Last comment today. I still can't get over, or the last topic today, I still can't get over the President's Warsaw speech, which I think is something is very significant. And I'll tell you, if I was as much of a propagandist as so much of the establishment press was about Barack Obama, if I treated President Trump the same way, I'd be saying things like that's a historic speech that we'll be referring to in 40 years or 50 years, and we'll be checking in with it from time to time. I'm not going to say those things, Dr. G, because I want my reputation as being at least somewhat fair to remain intact. But this was a speech about what is really is the survival of Western civilization and how seriously we are taking the threats to us, both internal and external, and this is being described quite literally as white nationalism, according to much of the establishment media, not the far left media, establishment outlets are referring to as white nationalism. I just want to know a week or so on if you've reflected on that at all, and if you have any thoughts.
Do you want to drop the administration? That was excellent. Thank you.
No, don't say that.
I knew.
Just joking, Dr. G. No, I take it as a compliment. Yeah.
Thank you. I knew the guys who wrote the speech. I saw the speech before it was delivered. And it was, and it will go down in history as a historic moment. Why? After 8 years of America or its leader apologizing for who we are, of using every massive crisis in the world as a hammer to beat down America, we're back. And the president was unequivocal. That was a moment that echoed Brandenburg the Brandenburg Gate in '87, or Reagan at the Palace of Westminster in 1982. That was consciously an echo of those speeches. Why? Because we are proud of Judeo-Christian civilization. We are proud of who we are, what we represent. And we went to the heart of a country that survived, that thrived under fascism, Nazism, and communism, to remind the world that we're there in Poland at the site of the Warsaw Uprising because we, like the Poles, believe in family, in faith, in God, and in nation. We are not guilty of anything to do with what the left would want to accuse us of. The West is a civilization that others look up to and wish to join. But there is a threat from the outside, groups such as ISIS, rogue nation-state actors such as North Korea. And what the president alluded to, and you nailed it, is the internal threat. Because perhaps the greatest threat of all is if we allow the radical left to continue its narrative and to undermine our will and our faith in ourselves. We need to rediscover who we are, return to the principles of the founding, because that's the eternal truth. And under this president, under Donald J. Trump, that is exactly what we will do. America and her values are back. We will be friends to our friends, and our enemies better watch out.